We are often told that Islam is a religion of peace and it has nothing to do with violence, that Muslims are the biggest victim of oppression, and anyone who criticizes them, anyone who wants to draw attention to certain behavior and activities of these Muslims are nothing but racist and bigots. I really didn't want to make this video, but there are lots of news coming out of Bangladesh right now, and many of this news is extremely graphic, distressing. I have seen women being raped in their own homes in front of their parents. People beaten to death, hung upside down from the bridges. There are instances of tortures in as many as 27 districts where mostly Hindus have been targeted only because of their religion. Many people have been tortured. They have been bashed, they have been threatened, they have been murdered. Whether it's school teacher, whether it's shopkeeper, everyday people have been targeted, had been attacked just because they were Hindus. There are also reports that many Muslims came to the houses of the Hindus and looked for women. They were snatched, they were kidnapped in front of their hapless and hopeless parents. Houses, shops, temples have been razed to the ground, have been destroyed, have been set ablaze, have been torched in the middle of the night. Now, two things I really want to highlight today. First one is the cover-up. There are pictures in social media doing its rounds showing that Muslims are standing in front of the temples, forming a human chain, preventing these temples from being destroyed. However, the true story is exactly the opposite. For example, one of the temples that were destroyed, that were burned to the ground, is the ISKCON temple. Okay, this was the temple where Muslims were fed iftar. At the end of the day, during the time of Ramadan, Muslims usually break their fast with a meal, which is called iftar. And this iftar was served inside this temple for the Muslims. And how the Muslims showed their gratitude towards these Hindus? Well, you guessed it, they burned that temple down. This story has not been provided. What was provided instead is that a group of people were standing in front of these temples to prevent it from being destroyed, which is a total cover-up of the atrocities that are committed inside those temples during this time. One of the lies that we are often told by the Muslim world is this, that Islam promotes coexistence. It doesn't promote persecution of the religious minorities. An often cited verse is chapter 2 verse 256. There is no compulsion in religion. This is, by the way, an abrogated verse. Abrogated by verse of the sword, chapter 9 verse 5. In light of the events that has taken place on October the 7th last year in Israel, we have seen thousands of people taking to the street in solidarity to the people of Gaza. We were told that Israel is an apartheid, that Israel is an occupation, and as such, those savages from Gaza, the Hamas terrorists who went on to Israel on that fateful day, butchering some 1,200 innocent civilians in the most sadistic and barbaric ways possible, chopping off the hands of the children in front of the parents, gouging out the eyes of the parent in front of the children, burning entire family alive, raping their women, taking them hostage. All of these heinous crimes that has been perpetuated against a completely innocent civilian was an act of resistance. This is what we have been told by the people who took to the street in solidarity to the people of Palestine all over the world. Now, applying the same principle, what was the fault of the Hindus in Bangladesh that they have been subjected to this brutality now? The reason is very simple. It is all about Islamic war on other cultures and traditions. Whether it is the Jews in Israel, Hindus in Bangladesh, or the Yazidis in the Middle East in Iraq, the reason for their brutal persecution is always their beliefs and customs. And now that we have invited this hostile religion of Islam, we are all going to face its consequences sooner or later. What will you do if this woman was your daughter or your mother or your wife? Just a few months ago, you saw what happened in a peaceful music festival in Israel. How those peace-loving young girls were abducted into the Gaza Strip, brutally raped, and then their dead, naked bodies were paraded in the van while those savages were cheering on the street. The excuse was ready. It was a resistance. And now that the Hindu women have undergone the same fate, what is the excuse? When those Pakistani savages brutally massacred some 2.4 million Hindus in 1971 in Bangladesh, the whole world remained silent. This Hindu genocide is not even recognized as of today. Just as you saw on the October the 7th, Hindus back then were hunted down from door to door by these savages. We are told that this was a war of liberation. But liberation of what? This so-called liberation war was in fact a cover-up of an ethnic cleansing. One of those Pakistani savages in military uniform said just as much as this: Hindus among the Bengalis are like the Jews, scum and vermin only to be exterminated. And do you know who is this Pakistani vermin who said this? Niaji, Lieutenant General Niaji, who surrendered on December 16th. What you saw on the October the 7th, is that anything new? What if I tell you that this 7th of October happened for 9 months in Bangladesh in 1971 alone against the Hindus? But hey, when the population of Gaza doubled, nearly tripled, since 2005, after the total withdrawal of the Israeli forces, we are quickly reminded that that was a genocide. That was an example of ethnic cleansing. And then again, when the Hindu population in Bangladesh, the indigenous community, devastated, their men, women and children slaughtered en masse. This Hindu population reduced from nearly half to less than 10% within 3 decades. Guess what it is? Secularism. But it's not over yet. What is happening right now in the UK, when the machete-wielding masked man, chanting religious war cry, hunting down the natives on the streets of Britain, this will soon become a commonplace. Thanks to the cultural enrichment that has been allowed by our weak and meek politicians, sugar-coated by our virtue-signaling celebrities and covered up by the so-called journalists and media experts.